Hello Malaysia, hello world. Apa khabar?
Apa khabar?
Welcome back to ECM Talk, Edu Channel Malaysia. Our topic for today is common sense common? I'm Raja Shahrul, your host. By breaking down the phrase into two words, common and sense, we can begin to get down to the heart of the matter. Common implies that something is available to everyone, free to use by the common people as well as the educated and privileged alike. Sense often refers to one of the body's senses and their ability to perceive external stimuli, example sight, smell, touch, etc. Basically, sense refers to an understanding of something and the recognition of an object based on previous or present experience. Without going too much into it, let us hear from my guest speaker for today to elaborate further on this topic. Welcome Mr. Muhammad Ismawi Ibrahim, a Deputy Head of Faculty of Education and Languages from a local private institution here in Malaysia. With the strict SOP rules, I will be discussing this topic with my guest from his place. Welcome to ECM Talk. Apa khabar Ismawi?
Khabar baik, thank you.
Okay, I will start my first question to you, sir. How would you define common sense? Is it something related to our shared values or merely just a reflection of a person's personality?
Well, actually, the definition for common sense has evolved throughout time. And today we could see that common sense is actually defined by the way we perceive things to be good. Okay, we always associate common sense with the good thing to do or the right thing to do. And funny enough, common sense itself is actually not real. It doesn't actually exist. It exists in what we call a negative space. People only bring it up when they realize that there is no common sense. You don't actually go out of your way to practice common sense, but when there is none, you actually bring it up. For example, when something that happened didn't seem to follow common sense rules, then only common sense suddenly is brought up. For example, why didn't you do this? That would be the common sense thing to do. So it exists in this kind of like a weird negative space.
Now, does common sense really is in everyone, or is something that they have to develop, Ismail?
I think common sense is in everyone. There are a lot of, for example, psychological scientists and researchers who have proven that it could either be a biological thing. We were born with common sense.
Yeah.
There are also arguments that say that we are trained in the common sense based on our culture, education, values, religion, and so on.
Okay. My next question to you. Would you say common sense is common in Malaysia? I mean, for example, in current circumstances, are Malaysians practicing these common sense values when adhering to the SOP of COVID-19 as governed by the government?
I think, funnily enough, if we are to define common sense as a shared value among maybe a community of people, then we could say that Malaysians do practice very good common sense values. If we compare, for example, to other, more advanced countries like in the United States or United Kingdom, for example, where there have been a very large number of cases of COVID-19 compared to our own at the beginning of the MCO, and the way that Malaysians in general all were very compliant to the SOPs, were very compliant to the rules. We stayed at home, we practiced quote-unquote common sense. Compared to other countries, for example, who openly defied common sense by going outside, participating in gatherings, for example. However, what we have to be careful is that is common sense the same as compliant?
Yeah.
Right? It's common sense the same as compliant. So being compliant does not necessarily mean that we are practicing common sense.
Yeah.
It could just be that it is a logical thing to do at that time, right? So we're thinking about the safety of our family, we're thinking about the safety of ourselves, and how that MCO, for example, could ensure all these things to happen. So we were compliant to the rules, but common sense could tell us differently. Maybe we felt that common sense would say that if I walk outside or I take a jog in the middle of the afternoon in a large park where there are nobody else around, I shouldn't be I shouldn't be exposed to COVID-19 because it's common sense that I should be able to do that.
Okay.
But I'm being compliant, so I stay at home. So that's the difference. There's a slight difference there. So
correct.
The definition of common sense and compliance might be sometimes
Intertwined.
Intertwined.
Yeah. Okay. My third question, Ismawi. How can we, as a society, create a mindful generation with at least better sets of common sense mindsets? And where does it start usually? Home, school, friends, or the environment, your surrounding?
I think school plays a big role, and a lot of the things that we see during the MCO, the level of compliance that Malaysians had, I think were instilled very strongly in our culture to begin with. We are a very compliant society. We follow rules. We don't have a very strong individual sense, and that is reflected in our school. The way we organize our education, as it were. Like we have assemblies, we wear uniforms, and things like that. So it allows for a bigger bubble of common sense values. So there are a lot more overlapping common sense values between different cultures and things like that, because we have this very uniform way of doing things in education. If you look at families, for example, you also have a lot of examples where common sense can be taught to children, at least in the sense that positive values can be taught to children. Asian values, for example, are very compliant Asian values. You listen to your parents. When they tell you to do something, you do. You don't talk back, for example.
Right,
you don't challenge the instructions that were given to you and so on like that.
Right.
So you grew up to be compliant. So this is very different to how we view Western culture, for example. We're very individual. You have this authority to be yourself, like you can make your own decision, you can challenge the authority and things like that, which is great also at the same time. However, in a situation like the MCO, which one is more successful, is better in terms of managing the situation.
Why does that happen, Ismail, when in the Western world they tend to believe that common sense is something that they don't need to follow, so to speak. It's something that they themselves can cultivate. And whereas us here, like you said correctly, we are very law-abiding when it comes to certain procedures and rules and regulations. We believe that it relates to common sense. What do you think, Ismail?
I think it's closely tied to our culture. Our culture, I think it's just two very different cultures. The way we operate in our society is very different. We are a very communal group of people. We believe in shared values, similar values, for example. Individualism is often viewed as something strange, and we don't encourage individualism, for example. So if somebody comes into the classroom with green or purple hair, he or she would immediately be alienated, for example. And the reason why is because we believe that everybody should be sort of like homogeneous in a way. And the word homogeneous, the word homogeneity is often repeated in a lot of our education, in our perlembagaan, for example, okay, and things like that. However, in Europe, in the United States, I think they believe a lot in individual culture, individualism. So everybody has their own unique perspective on how the world, how they see the world, and as they grow up, they become a very different group of people compared to us.
They put it in such a way that that's bureaucracy to them, isn't it? Ismawi?
Yeah.
How do you think it relates that far? Talking about bureaucracy, is it because it's in their mindset, I suppose, isn't
Yes,
it?
I believe so as well. I mean, for example, in the United States, there's a very strong fundamental belief in what you call that, the power of the people.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
against the government, and
Yeah.
how the government and the people are very separate things, and the need to challenge the government whenever they feel that the government is tyrannical, for example.
Yeah.
So they will feel very strongly about that, which is a great value.
Yeah.
For us, for example, we have a very different. For example, we have the Sultanate. We have a different kind of perlembagaan and Sultanate. So we are used to trusting our leadership a bit more.
Yeah.
We believe in that the leadership has our interest in mind, and when they make decisions, they're always thinking about the people. So we are more compliant. We are more patient and understanding in that sense.
Okay. My somewhat last question here, Ismawi. The act of providing food donations to the less fortunate can be regarded as an act of kindness. What's your view on this? Does it reflect the practice of common sense in the society?
I think so. It depends on how you look at it, though. Like I said before, when we define common sense, it is very unique to our own understanding of common sense. So maybe, for example, for us, we believe that feeding the poor, feeding the homeless is common sense. You have people who are poor, you have people without food. The common sense thing to do is to feed them. Okay. However, in other parts of the world, you might view that as something a bit more, unique. It's a unique practice, or it's something that is out of the way. It's not common for you to go out and provide such service to people. So I believe it is common sense. It is something that is fundamental, and every government, every country in the world should be responsible to the weakest in the society, and we have to do what we can.
But there are, I think, if you're talking about UK, I think you should be familiar with this, Ismawi, on that Rashfords Feed the Children campaign, the school meal campaign.
Yes.
I mean, it is something that you don't get the consensus. I mean, do you see that as being selfish of them? I mean, considering them coming from the UK, I mean, it's always been like, we are always for the people, despite your color, your race. What do you think about this?
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
The scenario in the United Kingdom right now, and
Right.
if people are not familiar, Marcus Rashford is a professional footballer who
Yes.
initiated a Feed the Poor Children campaign. So
Yes.
in the UK, you have a lot of children who do not have meals during the day because they depend on school meals, provided by the government. So during the holidays, and especially during the COVID-19, the schools are closed, therefore they do not have access to this food, right? So Marcus Rashford went out of his way to ask the government to continue providing food for these children during the school holidays, and recently the government voted not to do that.
Right.
And a lot of people were shocked, why would the government decline to continue this program?
Right.
So then you look at where the common sense lie, right? What happens to common sense? These are children. They don't
Precisely.
have any money. They don't have any power. They don't have any way to feed themselves. So it makes sense that the government would step in.
Yep.
So, but it is good to see that there's common sense among other people. So since they voted against that move, a lot of like small businesses, cafes, restaurants all over UK have stepped up and provided their own free meals to these kids. So they advertise on Twitter saying that, since the government said that they're not going to help us, so we will do it ourselves. You can come to the restaurant, pick up a free meal, free of charge, which is great. So you can, there's what you call that, a saying that saying common sense prevails. At the end of the day, everybody always want to make decisions which is best for everybody. Right. So the fact that they're using common sense to make that decision is good.
How about in Malaysia, Ismawi? We have the Kecara Soup Kitchen Society, the Helping Hands, and that this Ustad is Ibit Lu's projects, the providing food or donations to the needies. How would that be in comparison to what Rashfords is doing?
I think they're very, very similar moves. They're very, very similar in the sense that you have the people with means helping people without means. In the sense of providing help, food. Recently, there was a water crisis where the person that you mentioned just now, Ustad Ibiliu, provided a tanker full of water to the people in the area, which was good to see. Can we call this something logical? Was it something logical to do for people with money, with ability, with access to certain things, to provide it to other people? KKM recently, for example, Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia, I think yesterday or today, relaunched their donation portal to help Sabah, to provide money to help the people in Sabah who are suffering a lot right now. And we could say that common sense tells us that everybody should do something and help out.
Okay, interesting. As mentioned by Ismawi earlier, common sense is largely influenced by one's experience in the world, but everyone's experiences are limited and different. This is why the idea of common sense can also be dangerous and potentially isolating. If some piece of cultural or local knowledge is treated as common sense, an individual's experience regarding that topic may be seriously skewed. What is true in one place may not be true or socially accepted somewhere else. So, is common sense common? Really? Once again, thank you, Muhammad Ismail, for sharing your views on this topic. Now, what do you all think? Please like, share, and subscribe to Edu Channel Malaysia and let us hear from you. COVID-19 is not quite over yet. Don't forget your mask and sanitizer. I got a big bottle here. Everyone, take care and stay safe. Jumpa lagi.